Welcome back to Agent Academy. This is Mission 9, Document Generation. I'm April Dunnam, a cloud advocate at Microsoft. In this mission, we're going to dive deeper into AI prompts and see how we can use them to output Word documents. We'll take a look at what you need to do to format a Word template so that you can use it in a prompt, and we'll see how we tie this all together inside of our agent. In our previous lessons, we've taken a look at multimodal prompts. And these are prompts that can not only accept text as an input, but also images and documents. But when we talk about multimodal prompts, we're not only talking about what inputs they can receive, we're talking about how they can output information as well. The most common output option for a prompt is going to be text. This is good for the majority of your circumstances where you don't need structured processing. Things like generating short summaries from long blocks of text or doing things like classification. But we can also output to JSON, and this is really good when we want to integrate with databases and we need a more structured output. This ensures that we always have consistent field mapping for those data integration scenarios. But what if you need more of a text output, but you want it to be structured text? That's where the document output comes into play. This allows us to take a Word template and fill that in with our prompt dynamically so that we have a nice structured output. So this is great for those situations where you want a consistent layout and a lot of formatting. Think of things like proposals, reports, and briefs. And it's also good when you want to take advantage of some of those Word capabilities like being able to do reviews and track changes. So how does this all work? Well, you need to start with a template in Word. And in that template, you're going to map any field that you want the prompt to dynamically fill in. In your mission, you're going to fill in this template for interview questions. But this could be any document, one very highly formatted, like say an invoice template. The key though to getting this to work with your prompt is this. Anywhere that you want to be able to have the prompt fill something in, you need to have 2 opening curly brackets, a title for that property, and 2 closing curly brackets. So you'll notice in this template that you're using in your mission, we have the job number, which is our heading, and then I want to fill in the job number from my prompt. So I have the 2 curly brackets and then job number for the title. And I'm doing that everywhere where I want to dynamically fill in data. Now there are some best practices that you want to be aware of to make this process as seamless as possible. First is the instructions in your prompt are going to be very important to making this work. It needs to be able to know and understand how to map what you're saying in the prompt to the inputs. Now, in the case that you're going to be going through in your mission, it's really simple because all of the input names map directly to the names of the fields that we want to map. But you might run into scenarios where there's not a one-to-one correlation. Maybe you have placeholders where you need to fill in a bunch of names for people and you have one called Name 1, Name 2, and Name 3. You need to be able to rely on your instructions in that case to tell it where it should fill in the appropriate values. Also, be mindful of formatting. We're outputting to Word for a reason. We can do all of the formatting that we need natively in Word. We shouldn't be trying to do different formatting things like highlight the title in bold and things like that in the instructions themselves because we can do that all in the Word document. And finally, check your template size and security. For this to work, your document template can't exceed 20 megabytes, and it can't be marked as confidential or contain passwords. Now that we understand the process a bit, let's see how this actually works. We'll go into Copilot Studio and select Tools so that we can build out the prompt first. We'll select New Tool, Prompt, and now we can configure our new prompt. First thing we'll do is rename this. This prompt is going to help us with that interview question document prep, and then we're going to paste in our prompt. Now this prompt is pretty detailed. The first thing that we're asking that it does is extracting the candidate details. Then we wanted to analyze the job description, pulling things like the requirements that are must-have and nice-to-have. And once we have the job candidate info and then the job requirements, we want to match the candidate resume against those job requirements. Then we'll assess the overall candidate fit, and finally we'll generate the interview questions. And we have some requirements for how those questions should be formatted. And at the very bottom of the prompt, we have our input data. And we need to replace these forward slashes with valid inputs. The first input is application number, and we want that to be a text input that we'll pass in via our chat with the agent. So we'll do a forward slash, we'll select text, then we'll name this application number. Now for the rest of these inputs, we want to use a concept that we explored in previous missions of Dataverse grounding. So all the candidate details, the resume, job, and evaluation criteria are stored in Dataverse tables that we want to reference. So we're going to take this application number that we input in via our chat with the agent and then pass it in so that we can filter and find the necessary candidate, resume, job, and evaluation criteria. So we'll start with candidate details. We'll do a /, select Dataverse, and we're going to go to the job application table. And in the job application table is a lookup to the candidate. So we're going to choose that and we'll pull out their name and their email and we'll add that in. Now we want to do a filter attribute because we want to make sure it's returning the correct candidate based off of the job number. So we're going to select filter attribute and we'll say application number. And then for the filter value, we're going to add a value and choose our application number input. Now we'll click close and that will pull in the right data. We're going to repeat this for resume details. Go back to the job application, except this time we'll choose the resume lookup and we'll select cover letter, resume number and title, and the summary. And notice how when we do this a second time, it maintains that filter attribute. So we don't have to reset it. Now we'll go into job details. That's another lookup, this time to the job role. And for this, we want the description, the number, and the title. Same thing for the filter attribute. And last one is the evaluation criteria. And that's actually nested in the job role and in this job role evaluation criteria. And we'll select the criteria name, description, and weighting, and keep that same filter attribute. All right, now that we have our prompt and all of our input mappings and Dataverse grounding done, it's time to actually do that word output integration. In the model response section, go where it says output text, and you'll see this is a drop-down, and one of the options we can choose is this document preview option. So we'll select that. And once we have that option selected, a new button will pop up here for document settings. And this is where we can go and upload our Word question template that we looked at earlier. So we'll browse and I'll get that uploaded. And as soon as we upload that, notice how it identified all of the fields that we had mapped. And you'll notice how these 19 identified fields directly correlate to these mappings that we did in the Word template where we put everything in these double curly brackets. Now that we have our prompt, our inputs, and our output specified here with our Word template and all of our fields mapped, all we have to do is test before we actually integrate this in our agent. Before we can test, we need to go to our application number input and put in a valid job application. Now let's click test and we'll see what happens. So notice a few things here in our model response. First, it's taking all of those inputs that we have, the job number, job title, and it's showing us what it pulled for each one of those. So we have the job title, which is correct for this job application. It's a Power Platform Architect. It pulled in the description and the requirements and all of the details that I asked. But it also has a link here to an output file, and that is the actual Word file that's filled in for us to look at. So we can open this up and look at it, and there you go. Instead of placeholders, now we see all of our values filled in, including those interview questions. Now we're ready to save this and then start integrating it with our agent. To do this integration, we're going to leverage an agent flow. So we'll go back over to the Tools section, add a new tool and a new agent flow. We need to click on the trigger here and just add one input where we can pass in the application number. Now we'll click this plus button and we're going to call our prompt by selecting Run a Prompt directly from the agent flow. We'll select our interview question doc prep, and for the application number, we're going to map that to that input that we just added. Now you might be wondering, why aren't we just calling this prompt directly in the agent? Well, the problem is we want to be able to get the actual file when we ask the agent to generate an interview prep document. And the only way that we can have an actual file is if we can pass a file object back. So an agent flow allows us to do that. So what we'll do here is we'll click on this respond to the agent output, and we'll add an output, which is a file type. We'll call this interview file. And in the value, we're going to click on this Power Effects button and put in this expression. So this is what the missing piece is, which we can't do natively in the agent right now, and why we need this agent flow capability, because it's able to extract and get the actual file object and pass that back so we can use it in the agent. So that's what this expression does. And now we have our very simple agent flow. So we're going to name this doc prep and publish it. And now we're going to go into the agents tab. Now in this multi-agent scenario, we had the hiring agent, which is kind of the main agent, and then it calls the interview agent. So since this is for generating interview prep documents, it's part of that interview scenario, which we might want to be able to do this independently outside of the overall hiring scenario. So we want to include this in this interview agent. Now the other thing that I'm going to do differently here, rather than modifying the instructions to just tell it to call the agent flow and return the results, is I'm going to use a topic. So we'll go over to the topics tab, select add topic and from blank, and we'll name this generate interview doc. And the reason we're doing this is for the same reason we did the agent flow. It's all to make sure that we're able to return a file to the user when they ask for this interview prep doc. We need to be able to tell this trigger when it should run. So I'm going to put in this description here that it should generate an interview prep doc with the applicant details, roles, and interview questions. And when this topic is called, we need to be able to pass in the application number. So to do that, we're going to click on details here and select input, and we'll create a new input variable. I'll call this var application number. We're going to leave this to dynamically fill. And for the description, I'm going to give it some reference to fill with the job application number referenced in the chat. It should always start with an A followed by at least 4 digits. That gives it some guardrails so it knows how to call this and what to fill it in with. Now we need to call that agent flow. So we're going to click on this plus button. We'll add a tool and we'll choose our doc prep flow. In the flow, we also have that input that we created for application number. So along this whole chain from when the user puts in the question in the chat to generate this doc and gives the application number, we need to take that, pass it into this topic, and from the topic, it's going to flow into the agent flow and then into the prompt. So we're kind of following this whole chain of where this job application number is going. So what we'll do is click on this input, click on the 3 dots, and we'll map this to that input variable we just created. Now we just need to respond with a message that shows the user the file. So we'll click on the plus and say send a message. We'll say here's your interview prep file, and then we'll select the add button and we'll add a file. And in this required content option, we'll map it to our interview file, which is the output of our agent flow. And for the name, we'll click on these 3 dots, and this time we'll do a formula and just have it take the application number and then append interviewprep.docx. And that's all we need. We'll just save this, and it's time to test this end-to-end process out. So since we have this connected agent scenario, we could be testing this out either from the interview agent itself or even from the hiring agent. So let's actually go to the hiring agent here and see how this all flows through. And I'll just say to create an interview prep file for job application A0-1000. Notice how it immediately goes and calls the interview agent. Because of my instructions and everything that we have set up, it knows that's where that should happen. And now we got the response that our interview prep file is ready. It got the naming correct from what I said in the topic, and this is a downloadable link to the file. This is exactly what we wanted and why we needed to do that agent flow and topic scenario so that we can get this nice downloadable link. And now we can open this and see all of those details and have this ready to use interview prep file. All right, mission accomplished. We've created a prompt ready Word template. We've taken our prompt and outputted that to our Word file. We've connected that to our agent flow, which we then call inside of our agent. Thanks for watching. Keep on learning and going through the rest of the missions, and we'll see you in the next mission.